Fallout 76 isn't just dying, it's being buried alive. The Murdered Of series has never been about player count, it's never been about whether or not people like a game, it's about potential and the destruction of it. I thought the series was dead. I thought that no game would ever be able to bring it back, but since the launch of Fallout 76, so much more has happened. So many absolutely unbelievable things that make it obvious that Fallout 76 isn't just a bad game, it's changing Bethesda in its entirety, as well as the future of Fallout and Elder Scrolls. Fallout 76 is more than broken. It isn't just a fun spectacle, it's becoming more of an embarrassment by the day. It's becoming more shocking and more destructive to Bethesda by the minute. This is a complete assault directed towards gamers and the casual consumer, and it's what Bethesda thought no one would even notice. So today, I make what is hopefully the last video about this catastrophe. Today we break down the murder of Fallout 76.
Fallout 76 is a worthy inclusion in this series, because this series, again, is not about whether or not you like the game, and it's not about how many people are playing it or how many people are buying it. It's about a disaster that was caused solely by something like greed, and that is exactly what we're looking at here. We're not just going to look at what the game was when it launched just a couple of weeks ago or in beta. We're going to look at everything that's happened since, everything that has probably sealed Fallout 76's fate long before it's even got a chance to live a real life. So to get started, let's take a look at the first thing that Fallout 76 does poorly and the first thing that Bethesda is doing to make sure it never gets better.
Fallout 76 was built and sold on lies and deception. Remember Todd Howard saying that the game would have 16 times the detail of Fallout 4 and be a full, living, breathing world like Fallout had never seen, how it was still a Fallout world at heart, you could just play it with friends. It was none of those things. Fallout 76 was deceptively marketed and pushed as an evolution of Fallout. Instead, it's everything but. Todd Howard recently said the reason they didn't use a new engine and won't is because Creation Engine is easy to essentially copy and paste their worlds into, and it allows them to do it quickly. Well, clearly, quickly isn't for the better. Fallout 76 isn't just bad, it's vapid. It makes the launch state of No Man's Sky feel like it's no longer alone. Fun with friends doesn't cut it when I can have fun with my friends for free throwing rocks. It's not a defense. Fallout 76 is totally characterless. Its story is empty and ends up being totally unsatisfying when it does show its text-heavy head. Its world has no life or intrigue, and the more you play it, the worse it seems to get, the less interesting it gets. They want you to chase the endgame. They want you to be excited about nuking the world and engaging in high-level enemies, but those enemies' AI is constantly horrendous, and the joy of that endgame is sapped well before you get there. It's essentially a walking simulator that sometimes has you shooting things with guns that don't quite work. But instead of being a walking simulator in a really cool environment, it's a walking simulator in a buggy, untextured environment. It also doesn't help that this evolution was stitched together with what they had left from Fallout 4 and not adjusted for multiplayer. The Pip-Boy is basically identical to Fallout 4 and is now almost useless given that you can't pause the game. Oh, and that's genuinely worthless as well, and you won't use that as you explore all those assets that feel like you've seen them before, because you probably have. This is a lazy game, and it's not a good one. It also gets far worse. A bad game itself isn't newsworthy. What came next for Fallout 76 is the next thing that put a shot into its body, and the next thing on its path to death. Fallout 76 is a technical mess, and we'll get to how and why, but first we have to look at something else. Fallout 76 is not in any way Fallout. Bethesda needed to put the Fallout name on the game to sell it, but they didn't have to sell it when they did. Fallout was pushed out far too early, and it was revealed far too late. See, Bethesda has a business practice built around hype. Bethesda is secretive about their development and chooses to reveal their games extremely close to their release dates, essentially to build an insane and confined hype cycle and let it explode into purchases. The problem is, this does not give them a chance to, be honest about what the game actually is. See, no one knew what the hell they were pre-ordering with 76 because Bethesda refused to actually explain what the game was, and that was probably by design. Bethesda isn't stupid, they have QA testers, they had to have absolutely known the game was problematic, they just believed that people would buy it anyway and keep quiet about it. But when that didn't happen, when the game hit a whopping 46 on Metacritic and when the game's hype died, they're the ones that went quiet. Remind you of anyone? Bethesda did not communicate with their consumers, with their fans. They let their apple rot until no one wanted anything to do with it. Once they did talk, well, they apologized for their silence and said a whole lot of, once again, nothing. Bethesda hasn't outlined a deep and detailed plan for the long-term future of the game. Instead, they're focusing on upping stash limits and tweaking camps. That's not what people want to hear from you right now. Instead of acknowledging their clear wrongdoings with 76, Bethesda misdirected. If you have long-term plans for the game, real content, why not outline it clearly? Give people some hope for the purchase they now regret. But instead, they made sure the game got worse before it got better, by breaking it even further. Fallout 76 absolutely is unfinished. You've probably heard that statement now. Hell, at launch, I made it. What I didn't know then is the depths of just how truly unfinished the game is. Fallout 76's beta was a glorified middle finger to every customer that paid money for access to it. Bethesda misled gamers, and then they created a beta as an incentive to get them to drop money to experience it early, knowing full well the game was a mess. That beta came just 2 damn weeks before the full release, and then it released, and well, let's just watch these. A 45 gigabyte patch came to the game a few days later, and it made things worse. 45 gigabytes. Seriously. Clipping got worse, missions that once worked now don't, and new bugs were introduced. Weeks later, and staying connected to the servers is still a massive challenge, and the lag in store is still borderline unacceptable and insulting. If you don't freeze out of a loading screen, you have not had the full Fallout 76 experience, period. But this is all pales in comparison to Bethesda's response to these realities. The PR that we've seen throughout this process, the line of communication when it's actually been opened, has been disgusting. The Collector's Edition of Fallout 76 is a microcosm of the game's realities. It is a $200 Collector's Edition that includes a replica helmet and a West Tech canvas bag. The helmet is awesome, and the bag is not only nice, but it's also very usable. Well, at least it looked that way when people wanted to purchase it and then did. Instead, people opened the Collector's Edition and got this. This is a crappy $5 nylon bag, a bag that people did not pay for, a bag people didn't know they were getting, and a bag no one wanted. Bethesda's response? Well, that's why we're talking about this. Yes, false advertising is shitty. Yes, being cheap isn't cool, but it's the response that really shows the attitude that led to Fallout 76's destructive release. Bethesda's response to fans was, we ran out of material prior to launch, so we switched the bags. We didn't tell all of you for reasons, and we aren't going to compensate you except, wait, we will offer you $5 of our microtransaction currency as a thank you. In the process, they also managed to throw their customer support agency under the bus without actually acknowledging the situation they themselves created. Bethesda rips people off, Bethesda offers to fix it by helping you engage in the monetary system built to rip you off. It's a circle of con artistry. Bethesda's Activision-like pursuit of the bottom line at the cost of integrity, at the cost of creativity, is a very reality that has been overshadowed for years by the glitz of their world building and storytelling. But as all of that evaporates, it gives way to the clarity of how Bethesda views their customers and the products that they offer them. So with all that in mind, $200 Collector's Edition or not, where does that leave games like Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6? Where does that put Bethesda moving into 2019 and beyond? Bethesda doesn't seem to have any idea that they've spent 10 years in a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Before the launch of Fallout 76, the studio gave us a glimpse into their future. Todd Howard himself stated that the engine they have now, the Creation Engine, will be added to and adjusted for both Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6, which are their following 2 games. Why? Because again, it's easy. It doesn't require an investment, it doesn't require an even bigger gap in between releases. They can take your money faster and for less. This is concerning. I actually read the tea leaves here. I made a video about Fallout 4 and a video about Bethesda's pass or excuse that they get far too often a long time ago. But what I didn't know then is that when things finally did come crashing down, they wouldn't adjust. The final shot in Fallout 76's body is the reality that no matter how much time or TLC Bethesda gives it, it will never be problem-free or bug-free or even in a marginally working state because Bethesda's game-making tools simply don't allow it and they simply don't care to adapt. Skyrim is still broken on some platforms, Fallout 4 still has massive problems, and it's years after those games have launched. Bethesda isn't interested in things that aren't going to make them money in the long term. They've always allowed modders to fix their games. But being that they can't do it here, it's hard to believe that they have any capacity at all to do it themselves, given that they've barely made any attempt to in the past. So Fallout's state now is likely to be a lot of what Fallout is a year from now, or 6 months from now, or 18 months from now. There's too many people saying things like Bethesda will fix it, it's not that big of a deal, they're just bugs, Bethesda will iron them out. But they never do. Other people normally do. And where does that leave Fallout 76? Fallout 76 is a bit like a circus show. You sit there watching with bated breath as a man juggles flaming swords, and you know he's talented, so you're excited, but you feel safe. You know he won't drop them, you believe he's in no danger, but then suddenly he does. A sword comes crashing down on top of him, and that's it. It's not a fun sight, it's not what you were hoping to see, it's sad. And you realize that circus, that show, is something you'll never look at the same way again. Bethesda has dug themselves a circus-sized hole. A hole the size of Skyrim's flying mammoths, and it brings me to the message of today's piece. I think that this Murdered Of series, as rare as they are now, is a chance for honesty, but also brutal critique, more than anything else. Bethesda, you are the biggest source of missed potential that the gaming industry has been subjected to this generation. You have so much talent, so many great ideas, so much creativity, and you squander it. You spent a decade letting modders and fans clean up your messes. You gave a 75% effort every outing and made everybody else compensate that extra 25%. And finally, you've lost your support system. Modders can't save you now. So here's a bit of advice. Take a step back and look at what you're producing. Bugs are not just an unavoidable reality of games, and emptiness isn't a quality attached to multiplayer experiences by default. You are the problem, not us. Finish your next game. Truly finish it. And if you can't, maybe you need a new foundation. And if you're unwilling to get that new foundation, well, maybe you'll get some new customers, or maybe you won't have any at all.
I wanted to put a little addendum at the end of this video because I think it's important to mention a few things that I didn't mention throughout the portion of this piece. And that's that Fallout 76 will still change. I mean, everybody knows that. It's going to get content updates, it's going to get bug fixes, but I think it's important to note something that I did note in this piece, which is Bethesda doesn't really want to outline exactly what that means. I mean, they say very vague things like there will be content and we're not going to be silent anymore, but they don't really want to say what the plan is long term. And it makes me wonder if there really is a long-term plan that they're certain about now. I think the biggest fear with something like Fallout 76 is that Bethesda will abandon the game. It's hard to see why they wouldn't at this point. I can't imagine that the game is selling well, especially given its state in sales at this point, dropping in price long before Black Friday, and it's hard to imagine that Bethesda is seeing the return on investment that they thought they would see. So with something like this, if a player count dwindles, do you stick with it at all, or do you push ahead? I think if Sea of Thieves is any example, they'll probably spend some time trying to fix this game, but the hype around Sea of Thieves was not the hype around Fallout 76, and the problems with Sea of Thieves are not the problems that Fallout 76 has today. So I think the most important thing to take from all of this is be very weary of your dollar. Be very weary of your $60 or whatever you end up paying for this game, because we don't know what it's going to look like in 6 months, and we don't even know what they want it to look like in 6 months. And there's also the reality of, hey, who knows if they'll actually fix any of this. So again, be careful with your purchase. This is something I said in the piece, but I'm saying it again. And well, guys, that is it for today's doc, and as always, the start of a dialogue. What do you think about what Fallout 76 is? What do you think they could do to fix the game? How do you think that they could recover? And most importantly, what is your biggest problem with the game, if you have any at all? And let me know if you don't, but if you do, what is that biggest problem? Is it the world? Is it the story? Is it the bugs? What is something you're running into that is stopping you from enjoying this game? And I think, most importantly, or really most importantly throughout this entire process with Fallout 76, is would you recommend that someone pick up this game for $60 right now? I want to know the answer to that. I can't recommend that, but I think there are people out there that could. But I also think there's too many people that wouldn't. So are you somebody that would or would not recommend this game to somebody at any point in time? Would you recommend that someone purchase this with the chance of it getting better or getting content fixes? Let me know the answer to any of those questions down in the comments below. Let's have a real conversation. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you're not yet a member of this team, press subscribe. I put out gaming analysis, examinations, and essays just like this one twice, sometimes 3 times a week. So hit subscribe so you do not miss any. And my Twitter handle will be in the top pinned comment down below. You follow me there to find out why I wear clothes like this. And talk about things that aren't games sometimes. Find out what games I'm playing, participate in polls so I know what games you guys want to see talked about next. And, just kind of chat about life. So follow me on that Twitter handle down below. As you guys can see, I am back in my studio. Thank goodness. My real camera is not set up yet, but we'll get that quality up there too. But I am back in Manhattan. I am back in the studio. So you'll see a much more professional setup in these video portions now, and a much more stable one, because previously I had my fiance holding a camera that was an iPhone, just holding it. So yeah, look forward to that. And until next time, guys, I'm out.